Have you ever wondered how one of the most notorious concentration camps in history came into existence? Our story begins in the early 1940s, when the world was embroiled in a war of unprecedented scale and devastation. Amid this global conflict, the notorious Auschwitz-Birkenau took root in the quiet town of Auschwitz, Poland, its inception shrouded in the chaos of war. Established in the year 1940, Auschwitz-Birkenau was initially conceived as a camp for Polish political prisoners, a place where dissent was silenced and opposition quelled. The Polish intelligentsia, resistance members, and others deemed a threat to the Nazi regime were incarcerated here, subjected to harsh conditions and brutal treatment. Yet Auschwitz-Birkenau was not destined to remain merely a prison. As the war progressed, the camp expanded, its purpose morphing into something far more sinister. It was around this time that the decision was taken to use Auschwitz-Birkenau as a center for the extermination of the Jews, a decision that would forever mark it as a place of unspeakable horror. The camp's expansion was swift and systematic, its infrastructure designed to facilitate mass murder. A network of subcamps were established, each serving a specific function in the ghastly machinery of genocide. The largest of these, Birkenau, was where the gas chambers and crematoria were located, the heart of the extermination process. In this way, Auschwitz-Birkenau evolved from a prison camp into a death factory, its sole purpose to systematically exterminate millions of innocent lives. It became a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty, a place where the value of life was disregarded and humanity was stripped away. Thus, Auschwitz-Birkenau was born, a symbol of humanity's darkest hours. The scars of its existence are a stark reminder of the atrocities committed within its walls, a painful history that we must never forget, lest we repeat it. So, what was life like in Auschwitz-Birkenau for those who were imprisoned there? Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest of the Nazi concentration and death camps, was a place of unimaginable suffering. The living conditions were harsh and inhumane. Prisoners were crammed into barracks that were designed to hold far fewer people. These barracks were infested with vermin and disease, making the spread of illness rampant. The thin, striped uniforms provided little protection against the bitter cold or the scorching heat. The camp was divided into different sections, each housing a different category of inmates. Political prisoners, Jews, Roma, and others deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime were all held here. Each prisoner was assigned a number and a colored triangle which denoted their category. Red for political prisoners, green for criminals, pink for homosexuals, purple for Jehovah's Witnesses, black for asocials, and yellow for Jews. Each day began at dawn with a roll call that could last for hours. Prisoners were forced to stand at attention, regardless of the weather, while the SS guards counted them. Those who fell or fainted were often beaten or killed. Following the roll call, prisoners were sent to perform hard labor, digging trenches, building structures, or working in the camp's factories. The work was grueling and the prisoners were given little to no food, leading to widespread malnutrition and exhaustion. The brutal punishments for even the slightest infractions were a constant threat. Beatings, public hangings, and time in the starvation bunker were all used as means of control and intimidation. Despite these harsh conditions, many prisoners managed to hold on to their humanity, forming clandestine schools, orchestras, and art groups. Yet, it's necessary to remember that Auschwitz-Birkenau was not a place of life, but a place designed for death. The daily routine, the work, the punishments, they were all part of a systematic plan to dehumanize and exterminate millions of people. It was a life of unimaginable hardship, where survival was a daily battle. But how did the Nazis carry out their plan of mass extermination at Auschwitz-Birkenau? From the moment prisoners arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau, they were thrust into a ruthless system designed to dehumanize and exterminate them. The process began with the arrival of prisoners, most often by cattle cars packed to the brim, a harrowing journey in itself. Upon arrival, they were immediately subjected to a selection process. This was carried out by SS doctors who, with a mere glance and swift hand gesture, decided who would live for a while longer and who would die almost immediately. Those deemed fit for labor were separated from the weak, the elderly, and the very young, who were sent directly to the gas chambers. The Nazis' extermination process was chillingly efficient. It was a cold, calculated system that was part of their horrific final solution. The prisoners selected for immediate death were told they were being taken to shower facilities for delousing. They were ordered to undress and pack their clothes neatly, to be retrieved later. This was a cruel deception designed to prevent panic and maintain order. Once inside the gas chambers, the prisoners were exposed to Zyklon B, a deadly cyanide-based compound. The Nazis opted for this method because it was cheap, easily available, and extremely effective. Death came within minutes. The bodies were then removed by prisoners, known as Sonderkommandos, who were forced to perform this grim task. These Sonderkommandos also operated the crematoria, where the bodies were burned. The Nazis left no room for sentimentality or humanity in this process. Everything was designed for maximum efficiency and to leave as little evidence as possible. The extermination process at Auschwitz-Birkenau was a chilling testament to the Nazis' ruthless efficiency and disregard for human life. It was a system born from a twisted ideology, a stark reminder of the lengths to which hate and prejudice can drive humanity. It stands as a horrifying testament to one of history's darkest periods, a grim chapter we must never forget. Was there any form of resistance among the prisoners at Auschwitz-Birkenau? And how did the nightmare finally end? The human spirit is often an indestructible force, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. At Auschwitz-Birkenau, resistance took many forms. For some, it was as simple as maintaining their humanity through small acts of kindness or defiance. For others, it involved more organized efforts. There were those who risked their lives to smuggle in food, medicine, and even information about the outside world. There were secret schools and religious observances. All these were forms of resistance, subtle ways of asserting their humanity amidst inhuman conditions. But let's also talk about the more overt acts of resistance. The most notable was the revolt in October 1944, led by the Sonderkommando. These were prisoners forced to assist in the operation of the gas chambers. Armed with homemade explosives, they managed to destroy one of the crematoriums. While the revolt was ultimately suppressed, it remains a powerful testament to the courage and resilience of those who were enslaved. And then came January 1945. The Soviet forces arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau. What they found was a haunting testament to man's capacity for cruelty. But they also found survivors, over 7,000 of them. These were people who had endured the unthinkable, and yet they had survived. Their liberation marked the end of the nightmare that was Auschwitz-Birkenau. The liberation was far from a jubilant celebration. It was rather a moment of solemn relief, a moment tinged with grief for all that had been lost. Yet, it also marked the beginning of a long journey towards healing and justice. The survivors of Auschwitz-Birkenau bore the scars of their ordeal, both physical and psychological. But they also carried with them the indomitable spirit of resistance. They were not just victims, but survivors, witnesses, and bearers of a crucial history that the world must never forget. In spite of the horrors they endured, the spirit of resistance never died among the prisoners, and the nightmare of Auschwitz-Birkenau finally came to an end with their liberation. So what can we learn from the history of Auschwitz-Birkenau? In the face of unimaginable suffering and despair, it's a testament to the indomitable human spirit. It's a chilling reminder that we must be ever vigilant against the forces of hate, intolerance, and dehumanization. Auschwitz-Birkenau is a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting the darkest corners of our collective soul. Yet it also illuminates our capacity for compassion, courage, and resilience. The stories of those who lived, suffered, and died here, as well as those who resisted, survived, and bore witness, are lessons in the power of hope and the triumph of the human spirit over adversity. In remembering Auschwitz-Birkenau, we honor the memory of the millions who lost their lives, and we pledge to uphold the dignity and value of every human life. Never again must we allow such an atrocity to occur. Auschwitz-Birkenau stands as a stark reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink, but also of our capacity for resilience, resistance, and ultimately, survival.